Hello, happy Tuesday. Happy February 21st, 2023. It's so good to see you all. Um, as that last little minute is going, I've been looking at all of the hellos from various places. It's so good to see you guys. It's funny because each week so far, in those few minutes before we go live, I always think, is anyone going to come join me? It does my heart so good when I start to see the comments come in. So thank you for that, and thank you for saying hi when you join. And um, David, Michelle, Joshua, Ivy, Wendy, Kathy, just great people. Catherine, tons of you guys. Thanks so much for joining us and for joining me. And I love it. Been working fast to get all my kids in bed so you could listen in. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. I'll try to talk quietly so we don't wake them up. Um, yeah, so I know that I'm going to get right into things. I was in a session all day today, actually a casting session, and it prompted me to kind of want to share one thing before I get into the questions, which is, it was an all-day session. It was a callback director session for a project. And in this particular session, we had about 35 actors that we were seeing for various roles. And, at the end of the day, as the director was making his decisions, I started thinking that there wasn't a bad actor in the entire group. Every single one of the actors was very talented, and they were all just different versions of the characters. But at the end of the day, only five of them, six, maybe we have six roles, are actually going to get cast out of that full session, which was full of great actors. And so I say that actually not to discourage you, I say that to encourage you, because if you could have been a fly on the wall, what you would have heard was us saying things like, oh man, that person was great. We just need to keep them in mind for next season, or we need to keep in mind for another role. I'm thinking of the other projects I'm working on, which are with entirely different teams. And I'm making notes to myself about people that I'm seeing and where they might fit in something else. And these are the things you as actors don't know are going on. What can happen for you is that you just know you didn't get the role, so it feels like a failure of some sorts, or it can. I'm hoping that it doesn't, because I want to encourage you that doing good work, going and giving your all, and giving a great read, regardless of whether it results in being cast that specific time, it's planting really good seeds for future work. I always say good work begets good work. And I hope you can maybe view it as an opportunity to not only hone your craft and to, kind of exercise a little bit as an actor, but also realize that you are planting seeds that you don't even know about as far as other projects and other things going on. So I just want to encourage you that way as I thought about this, whole group of wonderful, talented actors that I'm sure I'll be thinking of and thinking about in future projects. So I just want you to think of it that way and just go into it knowing that doing the good work and bringing your best um, is never a bad thing. It can only bring good things. So, anyway, that's my little thought for the day as I come out of having been in a session all day. And so I'm going to quickly kind of go to some of the questions that were posed in the post earlier that Diego had made earlier, asking for questions for tonight's live. I'm going to address a few of those, and then I actually am going to go to your live questions that I already see coming in. So let me first, Laura May asked earlier, how do you feel about actors giving you the intent of the lines as opposed to verbatim memorization in an audition? So let me tell you that I think unless you're given permission to completely go off script, you really do need to, for the most part, stick with the script. Now, I think you could feel free to slightly kind of change it up a little bit so it feels organic to your voice. But when you say giving you the intent of lines scares me a little bit. And on some level, you taking upon yourself as an actor to change things is a little disrespectful, to be honest with you. So while we don't need it to be word for word exact necessarily, you need to understand that there's probably multiple versions of that script that were written, and it has been reviewed and reviewed and honed and really poured over by multiple people. So for you to kind of just decide you're going to change it, it's not really your place to do that. So I would say go into it really favoring the memorization, favoring or using the sides, but really going in with the idea that you're going to go with what's on the page. And then if you're given permission, like, hey, just make it your own words or don't worry about the script, then great, go for it, do that. So yeah. Okay, next question was, let's see. What's my opinion on Sam Benson asked, what's my opinion on small props in an audition? That actually came up today. The director was saying one of his pet peeves is props. He hates when people bring a bunch of props into a scene. He just wants to see the purity of the acting and for someone to not get too caught up in their head about the stage direction part of it. So typically we're trying to choose sides where we're choosing it because of the meat of what's happening, not because of really, usually not because of the stage direction. So I would say, and I think I've covered this before, but like a backpack or a phone or a water bottle or something like that, that's fine. Beyond that, then no, we don't need those kinds of props. If it calls for a gun, you could use a very clearly prop gun. Do not use a real gun. Just, a prop gun is fine, or something assembling that. But other than that, don't worry about the props. Okay. Betsy says, how do you know if an agent has the experience and contacts to book work, and does it matter where they are located? Well, it matters where they're located based on where you're located, just because they need to be able to get you work in the market where you are, right? And then I would say if they're getting other people work, then they have the experience and context, I would think, to get you work. So I think you just need to look at who their other clients are, and are those other clients working. If it's a new agent, someone just starting out, then I think just like they have to kind of go with their gut with you. If you're an actor just starting out, at that point, I think you'd have to really ask questions and understand their philosophy and go with your gut. Ask for wisdom, and try it. Just don't sign a contract, maybe, and just kind of go into it, say, hey, let's try this for 6 months or however long. And just don't commit yourself to anything. That way, if it isn't quite working, you have the freedom to make a change. If someone is asking you to sign and commit really heavy and they don't have that kind of credits that you can be assured, I would be hesitant about that. I would be careful about that. Angela asked, what inspired me to be a casting director? You know what? I will cover that in another time, but the bottom line basic is I love actors. I love the business in general. So yeah, it was sort of a process for me of learning all of film in various different positions. But I'll go into more detail, kind of my journey on another one. But yeah, you got to love actors for sure. Toya, is it a good idea to have one or two agents in close states? Typically it's more markets than it is states. So there's a Southeast market. So you're talking, Atlanta, the whole Southeast region, North Carolina, South Carolina, just that whole area. You wouldn't have someone necessarily in North Carolina, then also an agent in Atlanta, Georgia, and then also an agent in South Carolina. Like it isn't really that, it's more regions. You could have a Southeast agent and an LA agent, but close states, unless you're with someone who's telling you they can't procure you work or they don't have the contacts or resources in the next state over, then I guess, but really it's more regions usually. What type of notes catches casting director's attention when submitting on Actors Access? Really, the only notes that I really want to see is if it's helpful towards that specific role. So if it's a situation where like it's going to involve horses, well then tell me that you've been riding horses since you were 5, or some sort of specialized skill. Then let me know that actually, if it's true, only if it's true, let me know that is actually a skill that you have. If you have some sort of connection to the project that is helpful for us to know, then those are the kinds of notes, but not general notes. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment of like, hey, I would love to work with you, or I would love to be a part of this project. I kind of assume that just by your submission. So I don't think you need to put those kinds of notes, but notes about like, hey, I can be local hire in Charlotte, or I have family in Charlotte, or something where it's helpful to that specific project. Those are the notes that are most helpful and matter the most to me. Okay, if you don't have an agent, what is the best way to find and be seen for Christian casting opportunities? I'm going to put a pin in that because I saw a question in the live thread that also kind of went that direction as well. So Joshua says, is it important for an actor to maintain social media accounts? And I would say yes. I would say yes and no. Yes, it doesn't hurt, and it does allow us to see if we're interested and if we have reasons to want to kind of expand on your submission. It allows us to go and see more of you in a more of a 360 view or more well-rounded opportunity. It is a place, like a website is a place where you can post longer clips than, say, if you're creating a reel and it's just 2 minutes or 3 minutes max. You may have a great scene that's 2.5 minutes long that you couldn't use, but on your website you can post that. And if we're really looking at you for something, we may go to it. My opinion is it doesn't hurt you. It will never hurt you, and it can help you. So I am an advocate for that. I think social media is a very valid tool now. And if you are able to build a following, the reality is that can help as well. And having a presence on there is great. So that can be great as well. So I'm going to go back up. There was one question I saw. I'm going to answer others, but I'm trying to look for the one question. Oh, it was John Marcuso. Marcuso. He said, please, in all caps, answer my question. Been trying to break into faith-based projects and it's darn near impossible. Tips, please. What does it take? So that's why that question from earlier tied into this as well. There isn't a huge difference, quite honestly, in the mechanics of secular projects versus faith-based projects. So there's still a process by which typically we're casting, and that is still, for the most part, breakdown services, which can be through, we send out to agents and managers, and or we send out to Actors Access. You see those breakdowns, you respond, we go through them, we select those who want to come in. So that's the same whether I'm doing, a Western in the mountains of the Carolinas or whether I'm doing a faith-based project, as well. So there's not a big difference there. Now, I would say probably a tool that's really important in more of the faith-based filmmaking world is networking. So I would encourage you to be a part of different communities, groups. I brought it up before. Laura May has Christian Casting Community, which is really a community of people encouraging each other, kind of posting what's up and who's doing what. I see posts all the time of projects that are casting. There are projects that come up on there that may not get listed in breakdowns, or if it's a short film or a mostly ministry film type film. Um, you may hear about something like that in those kinds of circles. And as with anything, whether it's secular, mainstream, or faith-based, it's kind of finding the opportunity to get your foot in the door, and there's no one way for that to happen, no formula. So it really is. I've previously mentioned treating it like a job, like spend your time getting to know who's working in the space, who are the other actors, get to know them. Where are the film festivals and the different workshops and things where you can go and get to know the other people who are making films. Follow them and their pages. Look for opportunities where they might be speaking, or again, where there might be some community interaction. Don't be afraid to work with someone who's doing a short film, just like I encourage actors who are newer to do student films or short films. All of those things are going to be good. So it's, in that respect, is really no different um, than secular films. But you do have to remember, faith-based film is a much smaller section of the entire filmmaking world. So it really is going to be about understanding who are the people. And there's also faith-based casting is another place that's going to be specifically geared towards casting faith projects. There are a couple of agencies whose those agents and managers specifically look for those opportunities. So it's just about, I think, learning and understanding who's working in the space, looking for opportunities to be in community with other people who are working in the space, so that they can give you, the pointers and the things that have helped them. But all these things I'm saying could be said about someone looking to break into any sort of TV film. So it's not entirely different. And I hear you when you say it's darn near impossible. I do hear you. I'm not minimizing that it can be a challenge, but it is so true. Relationships, community contacts, things like that can make a big difference. So I would just really treat it like a job. Learn who these people are, research it. Um, yeah, use every resource tool you have. Use them all. Um, and just keep at it. Just keep trying. Just keep at it. Okay, so John, I feel ya. Okay, let's see. I'm looking for the next question. I have a question. Jennifer Joseph, does one need to be a true local hire for out-of-state projects? It depends. It's going to depend on a couple of different things. If it's a SAG, if it's a union project, SAG has very specific guidelines on what's considered a local hire, a modified local hire, or sometimes it's called a regional hire, and then a distant hire. There are very specific parameters about each of those on a SAG film. So local hire is within 100 miles, well, depending on the market, but 100 miles, no more than 100 miles. In some cases, it's 50, but modified local regional hire is 500 miles from the location. And then anything beyond 500 miles is an automatic distant hire. Now, SAG, there's a couple of things at play when you talk about local hire versus distant hire. There, not only does SAG have rules about that, but the different tax incentives, of course, their incentives are created. The states have approved them because their goal is to create jobs and opportunities within their state. So it could be, if you take Georgia, for example, you have to, I think same in Oklahoma, you have to show them if you're saying that you're a local hire. So they get a certain percentage of incentive from the state, or a certain amount of money from a state. And the state is saying, in order for us to give you this money, you have to have this many people, or this percentage of your cast and crew need to be local. Um, and when they say need to be local, that means we have to like give addresses. Sometimes it's copies of your driver's license. Like, you have to prove that you are in fact a true local. So in those cases, it wouldn't matter if you said, hey, I'm willing to fly myself out there, I'm willing to be a local hire. It wouldn't matter, because that production may need true locals in order to meet the criteria for that state's incentive, tax incentive. And then with regards to the SAG situation, is that again, on a SAG film, you could say, hey, I want to be, I'll be a local hire, I'll fly myself, all of that. But that production could take you at your word and be a local hire, and cast you as a local hire. But SAG ultimately says you can't waive. You need to read it, but if you're a SAG member, you're not allowed to waive certain stipulations within the SAG contract. And so it just is kind of a messy area when you aren't a true local hire. You say you'll be a local hire, but you're a SAG member and it's a SAG film. So it gets a little bit more complicated. So it's complex for production too. And the other reason I think it's difficult, it isn't always just about you saying, hey, I'll travel myself out there. As a producer, and any of you guys who've worked on production, dates change. So say you're going to have production was going to be outside, and they're going to have 3 days of rain. So they're quickly scrambling to what they call cover sets, which is typically a production will have days set aside that if they had to move because of weather related, they could quickly move those. But what that means is all of those actors that maybe were going to work in 2 weeks are now working tomorrow or the next day. And if you said, hey, I live in California, but I'll make myself a local hire in Atlanta and fly myself out, well, you're getting a phone call saying, we need you on set tomorrow, or we need you on set in 18 hours. And that's risky for a production to put that, to be willing to do that, knowing that it leaves them high and dry if a situation like that comes up. So I want you to understand there's all kinds of things at play when we're talking about someone saying they'll be a local hire. It isn't just as simple as that. For all those reasons I listed. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't get brought on as a local hire, and it doesn't mean, especially if you're in driving distance from somewhere and it's a project where you can be a modified local, or like I said, you're within driving distance, or you have family. There are certain things that make it much easier for production to kind of feel comfortable that you in fact would be there whenever you were needed. But anyone that's going to fly themselves in, that one's pretty tricky. Even if you were willing, that one's pretty tricky. So hopefully that gave you some insight as far as true local versus, hey, I'll do it. And it's just going to vary by production, but there are certain rules that you kind of need to follow. Okay, Catherine Lacey Dodd. How often should I make a new demo reel, and should I try to do 2 takes for an audition? I have covered this in the past, so always feel free to go back and watch some of the previous lives if you might find that helpful. It's good to see you, by the way, Catherine. Her son, Reuben Dodd, was, if you guys saw I Still Believe, he played Jeremy Camp's little brother. He's awesome. Anyway, how often should I make a new demo reel? I think as often as you have new, better material, then I think you should update. Your reel should always be your best material. So if you get a new clip and new material, then I would immediately go in and make the changes, because your best, most recent material is always going to be your best foot forward. Um, if you get a clip and it really doesn't add anything and your existing material is actually overall stronger, then it doesn't mean you have to change it every time you get a new clip. But if you get a new clip that is stronger, that is a better presentation, then I would get that switched out quickly, just because you want to have your best material there. Should I try do 2 takes for an audition? It's up to you. We don't always watch a second take. And as I've said previously, only do a second take if you have a fresh take to do, right? Don't do a second take that's just slightly different. But if you really in your mind have 2 different ways that a scene could go, or that choices you could make, then sure, do a second take, unless the casting director has said no. But otherwise, I think a second take is good. I wouldn't do any more than a second take. Okay, Amy Brady, do you feel it's worth the investment for a new actor, actress to attend a film festival? If so, could you, if so, and you could only pick 1 or 2, which ones you highly recommend? So I do think it's worth the investment. Now, I can't tell you what's worth the investment financially, because I'm not gonna, I would never want to pressure someone into making them think that they needed to spend a bunch of money to go do this thing, and that was going to be the key that would unlock everything, right? I don't ever want you to feel like that. So really, as far as whether it's worth it and what kind of investment and how much money to spend, those are things only you can answer. I'm never ever going to advocate that you either spend money you don't have, or put yourself in an uncomfortable position because you think this one thing is going to be it. It's going to be the thing that unlocks everything. But if you are, I do believe film festivals and opportunities like that are a powerful tool. So as you're investing in your craft, then I think it's a part of that investment. So just like a photographer would buy new lenses or update their backdrops or go to a workshop where someone whose work they admired, was talking about photography and their approach to photography and things like that, it would be normal to think that photographer would go and look at that as an investment in their craft. Well, it's no different with acting. So I do think that film festivals, workshops, the right kinds of them can be very, very helpful. And I think they're worth the investment within your means. Okay. Within your means. Now, I will say, and you guys probably already know this, but I will say you need to be leery of those that are doing the, hey, come be a part of our convention. You send them an audition, they're like, great, we're choosing you to come be a part of our big convention, and it's only $3,000 for you to get there, and we'll get you in front of these agents and those like big old talent convention type things where you spend thousands of dollars. I would stay away from those. I do not believe that is the way that you're going to kind of move things forward, especially when you associate how much they cost versus kind of what you get in return. But there are a couple of film festivals. The 2 main ones that seem to emerge are ICFF, International Christian Film Festival. It's actually Film and Music Festival that takes place in May in the Orlando area, in Orlando, Florida. Then there's the Christian Worldview Festival, film festival that takes place. Now it's consistently in Columbus, Georgia. And that is taking place actually in just a couple of weeks. I've gone to both of them. They both are very, very different experiences. So I think there's value in both. Um, and I would really just pick one and start with it, just knowing but they are two very different. But there's great classes, workshops, people speaking. Maybe the thing to do is to look at who's speaking, look at what the workshops are. If those are workshops that would be of value to you, if the people speaking and teaching and attending are people that you want to network with, that you want to learn from, then it's of value to you. So, and that goes with any festival. It's really going to be about, thanks, Diego. It's really going to be about who are the people you've identified that you want to connect with, that you want to learn from, that you want to kind of network with, and where are they? What are the festivals that they're doing? Because if this is someone that believe is excellent in their craft and is doing the kind of work that you admire or that you want to be a part of, then chances are any festival or workshop or event that they're speaking at is going to be of a certain quality level. So I think it kind of goes back to who are the people you want to connect with, you want to learn from, where are they speaking? These two that the links are on the page happen to be kind of the two main ones that we hear about, but there are others as well. There's the content um, I forget what months it's in. There's several. That's another thing that Christian Casting Facebook page can sometimes list the festivals as they're coming up and being talked about, and that's another place where, like, just networking and be a part of a community. Others will tell you about things that they're attending or things they've heard about or someone who's teaching. um, uh, yeah, so it's just great to be a part of that. There you go, Christian Media Conference. So there are a lot of opportunities. Just go with the people who you want to connect with, whether it be other actors or the people teaching the classes. John Worsham, hi, John. Do you keep a roster of talent you send auditions to, or is it it's project by project? There's just too many actors for me to keep a roster. Now, I get to know actors, just like I was saying at the beginning of this live, which is, I made notes about actors who did great work today, who are not going to get the roles that they were called back for today. They're not going to get the roles in this project. But I noted them, and each time I see an actor, I get to know them a little better. And so I hopefully get a little better at understanding which roles might be a fit for them. So part of being a casting director, hopefully you have a good eye for people and a memory for people. We do make notes in breakdown. I'll use breakdown services for an example. I can make notes under actors that will live with that actor. So every time that actor submits or is submitted by their agent, my ongoing notes on them show up as well. So that is one method that we use, but I don't go down a roster. Because I also don't want to just always be looking at the same people all the time. Like I also want to find fresh faces and new people, and people maybe I haven't had the opportunity to read before, or who are new. But I do love seeing familiar faces, and if they're right for it, I'll call them in. One thing you should know about me is, and a lot of you guys, I'm looking down the list of people who are signed in. A lot of you have become friends, really valued friends. And I love you, and I would love nothing more than to see you succeed wildly. But I'm going to be honest with you. Out of respect for you, I'm not going to call you in unless I really feel like you could be right for the role. So I love you. And I know it might feel good to be like, oh, I got an audition, but I'm not going to waste your time. And I mean that sincerely. I'm not going to do that because I know what you guys go through as you prepare auditions. I know how much time you put into it. I know how much thought you put into it and how seriously you take it. And so, out of respect for that, I'm not just going to call you in willy nilly and be like, oh, this should be, this would be fun, or I'll throw a bone or whatever. But if I do know your work and I've seen you doing good work and I'm like, maybe they could, maybe they couldn't, I'm going to err on the side of maybe they could. And I will call you in. So if you get an audition from me, the confidence you can have is that I truly believe that you could be right for it. Because otherwise I'm not going to waste your time. I have too much respect for you to just send an audition, make you put in all of that work for what isn't a serious opportunity. So be encouraged when you get the audition, because that means I really, really do see potential in there. And it doesn't mean that I won't take a chance on someone to do something different, or I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I've gotten emails sometimes. It's like from an agent, like, hey, so and so, can you let them tape for this? It's like, well, no, I'm not going to do that because I respect them too much. I could let them tape, but I know what they'll go through to put together that tape, and I know they're not right for it. And so I'm not going to waste their time. So anyway, hopefully you understand the heart behind that, the intent. It really is out of respect for you that I know what you guys go through, and I honor that, and I appreciate that. Um, okay, hi Kate, do you have slate shots attached to your photos on Actors Access? Oh, sorry, slate shots attached to your photos on Actors Access help your chances of getting an audition? If you don't have a reel, then definitely do a slate shot, because at least I'm seeing you speaking. I will say that sometimes I do click on the slate shot when I'm going through the kind of the first big round, and I can quickly just see someone speaking in person and get a sense of, like, what's the tone of their voice? What do they look like, as opposed to just a still photo. So will it get you an audition in and of itself? No. Is it a tool that certainly can be helpful? Sure. I don't see a downside to having a slate shot. And I will say that again, it I want to try to understand who you are if you're someone that I don't know. So any of the tools, reels and slate shot, whatever it means, where I can better understand if you're potentially a good fit, then that's a great thing. That's a good thing. There's no downside to that. That's kind of how I feel about slate shots. It's not going to get you the audition, but it's not going to hurt you. And it may be the thing that kind of pushes me over the edge if whatever comes across in that slate shot feels like a potential good fit. Jason, when casting says you're being sent for approval, are they usually sending more than one choice? It's hard to say because I don't. It kind of depends on the context. If you've already been through the callback phase or chem read, and it was just a few of you, and you're being sent for approval, that it may mean that you are the choice and they're now just trying to get approval. But it could also be earlier in the process. If a studio or production company, executive producers have a say in casting, you may be sent to them in a broader group for them to give their feedback and give the casting directors and the producers kind of an overall sense of who they feel could be right and who isn't. So usually it means you're in the final phase of a cast. It could be referring to an earlier part of the process, but usually it means that you're either part of the final one or two or three. Yes, they typically will send more than one, not a lot, like I said, two or three, just so that whoever they're sending it to feels like maybe they have a choice. Getting that far, then that's great. That's great because there's thousands of others who didn't get to that point. Usually it's a very, very small select amount, possibly even just you alone. Hi, Chase. What are characteristics or life trait choices that you have seen in as common trend with successful actors? Um, first of all, they love it. Successful actors, they love it. They do it because they really can't see themselves doing anything else. They have chosen acting because that's the core of who they are. They feel like that's what they've been gifted to do. That's what God has designed them to do, and they just can't imagine doing anything else. And I think it takes that kind of commitment and drive to really to really get the focus that you need. The other thing is they take it seriously and they understand not just the art side of it, but the business side of it. And they become as smart on the business side as they can be, in addition to developing yourself as an actor and as an artist. I think the most successful actors are constantly learning and growing and exposing themselves to other great actors and to good good work and good media, and they're pushing themselves. I think they also have a balance, a side that allows them to stay humble, allows them to understand that their acting is not their ultimate identity, that they are so much more than that. They are grounded in something greater than that, whether it be their faith, um, whatever it is that helps them to understand that their value as a person doesn't ebb and flow on whether they get a job. Because I think if your whole life, your whole being, your whole sense of worth is around whether you book a job or you don't, that's too hard. That's just too hard. It's too hard to a roller coaster to sustain for very long. And so you have to have a greater sense of grounding and understanding, of who you are as a person, your value in this world, that that God has created you with a certain gifting, and that you are so much more than whatever your last job you got. So I think it's a combination of all of those things that help, that do make a difference with regards to those who are the most successful. They work hard, you guys. It doesn't happen by accident. The people that you're seeing that are like being booked consistently, that it does they don't just sit back and it happens. They work hard. They work hard at the craft to be the very best actor they can, so that they're prepared, so that when they do get the booking, they go to set, that the director is wowed by what they do and loves working with them because they're confident and they're enjoyable to be with and they're not divas. And all of those things go into kind of what leaves an impression beyond just the acting part of it. Um, so yeah, there's a whole group of, I think, what causes people to be booked again and again and again. And the acting, of course, is first and foremost, but then there's the other things that come with just being a good human being. Be of service to other people on set. Be kind, be encouraging to them. People want to be around people who are encouraging and enjoyable. Um, yeah, and you gotta love it. I'll go back to that. You gotta love acting. You gotta wanna study. You gotta wanna grow. You need to just really think, this is what I'm born to do. And yeah, and then just go for it. Go for it. So I realize we didn't get to all of the questions, but hopefully we got to quite a few of them. And again, next Tuesday. We'll do it all again. And super excited. Although I just realized, yeah, next Tuesday we're all good. I realized the following week I'll actually be on a plane. That might be a little hard to do a live, but we'll give you all the details on that. But next Tuesday we are good to go. I'm excited. We'll be back with answer more questions. So if there's anything I didn't answer this time, we will try to get it next time. And yeah, I appreciate you all. Just one foot in front of the other, one day at a time, do good work. Go research your favorite actors. Go look them up on Masterclass. Go search YouTube for um, interviews that they've done. Just do something that helps move things forward for you in a positive way. You are so well. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. And yeah, happy Tuesday, and we will see you next week.